Remember Reach? Bungie's last entry in the Halo franchise sent the company off with a bang. Easily the most controversial of their 4 titles. It's loved and also hated by many. Having a lot to live up to coming off the back of the series' best-selling game Halo 3, Bungie tried to remain faithful to what made the Halo name so special while simultaneously modernizing it.
We definitely focused on trying to go back to sort of the core of what made Halo CE, the Combat Evolved, the sort of phenomenon that it is.
The addition of sprint and a change in the primary precision weapons is just the tip of the iceberg in that endeavor. This is the chronicle of a game that split the community and altered the shape of its franchise forever, only to somehow, some way, resurface 9 years and 2 sequels later to unify fans everywhere. This is the story of Halo Reach. After 3 massive successes with the original trilogy games, Bungie announced their 4th and what turned out to be their last entry into the franchise at E3 2009.
Halo Reach Falls 2010. But for those of you who can't wait that long, when you buy Halo 3 ODST, you'll get an invitation to the Reach Xbox Live multiplayer beta.
3 weeks after the beta ended, it was once again time for E3. This time around, a campaign trailer and demo was shown off.
Just last month, more than 2.7 million fans helped make the Halo Reach multiplayer beta the biggest in console history. And today, we're excited to unveil the world premiere of our campaign.
Taking a page out of George Lucas's book, Reach's story is a prequel to the events of Halo 1 through 3. It covers from the start of the Covenant's invasion of the planet Reach, up until where the first game begins. It's also significant for being the series' first main entry in which you don't play as Master Chief. After E3, in the lead up to the launch, there were weekly updates released that showed off various elements of the game, such as the leveling system or multiplayer medals.
The better you play, you'll eventually be put into a division. The arena divisions are broken up into Onyx Gold, Silver, and Steel.
A common theme among the updates was the focus on Forge. While Halo 3's Forge mode had been serviceable for the most part, Bungie understood that there was a large subset of players wanting to create bigger and better maps, and completely overhauled the mode for Reach.
We definitely looked at what we did in Halo 3 and said, what can we learn from this? It's one thing to build just a stunning amount of map variants, but like nobody was expecting Forge art, I don't think. Like that was just a completely, whoa, what?
This focus on Forge led to an independent series of posts by community manager Eric Osborne, titled Incompetent Cartographer, in which he built a map from scratch using the available Forge tools. Part of the process was him submitting the map through the same channels that the general population would use, although it doesn't appear his map named Riptide was ever added to matchmaking. Reach launched as the series' greatest commercial success. It broke Halo 3's $170 million launch day sales record, raking in over $200 million right out of the gate. It fared just as well from the critics, earning multiple 9 out of 10s from major outlets like IGN and GameSpot.
Though its deep roots may not win over those who haven't enjoyed Halo in the past, Reach stands tall as one of the best video games of 2010.
One thing the reviews did, though, was highlight the disparity between media outlets and more hardcore players. While the outlets praised the introduction of armor abilities as an attempt by Bungie to keep combat fresh, the more competitive players were less enthusiastic, to say the least. Armor Lock, an ability which creates a shield around your Spartan, was a particular sticking point. Reach was also the game that kicked off the sprint era. Being able to sprint for the first time in Halo was a rather interesting idea. A heated debate over whether it has a place in the franchise ensued, and that still lingers on 9 years later.
Yes, there may be a really sort of core part of the community that says, I do not want sprint, I think it's detrimental to the gameplay. That's fair enough, and they're allowed to criticise that all they like, but at the end of the day, if you want this franchise to survive, then does it have to appeal to that general audience?
The polarizing nature of the mechanic has left the devs stuck between a rock and a hard place, and an even tougher situation for how they handle it in relation to the competitive scene.
There's so many things that are wrong with this game that can be fixed in a very small amount of time. And that needs to happen during this 4-month off season that we're going to have with MLG, okay?
For the first year and a half of Reach's competitive life, the settings used included bloom, which is the widening of bullet spread as continuous shots are fired, and allowed for the ability to sprint. Eventually, the traditionalist crowd won out and the competitive settings were altered to disable sprint and remove bloom, but it's not entirely clear why it took so long to do so. A strong theory is that it had something to do with 343 taking over the lead on the franchise, as Bungie and MLG hadn't been shy about having the casual and competitive scenes use different settings in the past, and 343 had yet to fully take over at the time the settings were finally implemented. The tail end of Halo Reach also saw MLG run its second to last Halo event before dropping the series from its circuit, and AGL take over the major tournament organizer for Halo 4.
Royal 2's hands. He can win this game for them if he does not mess up with these rockets. Dave, high time for
Reach's single major update came on September 21st of 2011. Developed by 343, their first impact on the franchise, the aptly named title update saw a handful of major changes made. Starting with the armor abilities, both active camo and armor lock saw significant changes, forcing them to be used much more tactically. The camo ability saw a simple yet effective change in that the time it could be active for was reduced by 15 seconds. Armor lock was not so lucky. It got hit with a pretty big nerf. Prior to the update, while a player had armor lock active, they were invincible, and any attempt to attack them was an exercise in futility. Afterwards, while the players still didn't take any direct damage to their shields or health, the attacks served to deplete the energy level and thus knock the player out of armor lock much faster than before. It also removed the ability to plasma shed, the tactic of entering armor lock after being stuck by a plasma grenade in order to survive the blast. Bleed through was also added with the update. Bleed through is when a melee's damage carries over through the depletion of the opponent's shields and is applied to their remaining health bar. This allowed for 3-shot beatdown kills with the DMR. Last but certainly not least, Bloom was altered for the pistol, needler, and DMR, reducing it to 85% of its original value. While the buff wasn't as crazy, it also made the pistol and DMR more effective, and let's face it, less infuriating to use. To top it all off, none of the changes were ever implemented universally. Starting as a beta playlist, modes with the alterations were eventually merged with the vanilla modes in the various playlists. With Halo Reach, Bungie's alterations to the gameplay started a chain reaction of attempted innovation that resulted in a fracture still seen to this day. Ironically, the same title re-released 8 years later might very well be the start of an explosive revival for the franchise.
No way. Yes!
The first part of the Master Chief Collection to be released on PC, the first real chance for the competitive scene to show off the fabled no bloom, no sprint settings on a large scale, along with numerous big-name streamers to show it all off. This could be a chance to make sure that people not only remember Reach, but that they never forget it. Thank you so much for watching. I want to give a big shout out to Trespass for writing this episode. He creates his own Halo content that you should definitely check out down in the description. What were your opinions on Halo Reach? From its fabled single-player campaign to its fractured multiplayer, let's talk about it. And if you enjoyed the video, liking and subscribing is always appreciated.